Alrighty. We are going live on Facebook right now. Yep, there we go. Excellent. Okay. Let's see here. Thank you, those of us who are joining us. Welcome. We'll get started momentarily. We're going to wait a few minutes to get, or a minute probably, until we have a few more on, and then we will get moving. Alrighty. For anyone who is joining us on this call on Zoom, or you're on Facebook, if you need anything, and I'll address this later, but you are more than welcome to send a message in the chat to anyone with the label of SciStarter or Roland IT support for some assistance if you're having any issues with the technical bit. Roland, I think the tabs are showing. Is it possible to go full screen? There you go. Yeah, perfect. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to everyone who is either here or on Facebook. Happy to have you here. And you are at the event called Teaching in Higher Education with Citizen Science, and with a special guest from Budburst, a citizen science project of the Chicago Botanic Garden. And you can see her over in the panelist side, Dr. Sarah Jones. Hello. All right, you can go ahead and flip to the next slide and we'll get moving. Thank you. All right, so this is our team that usually does SciStarter Live. If you've been with us before, then you're pretty familiar with us. My name is Emma Giles. I am a program coordinator for SciStarter. So I run these live webinars with Roland over here and many more things. Roland, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, I'm Roland. I'll be your IT support today. In case you need anything, just put it in the chat.
Awesome. And then Darlene might pop in here. She likes to say hi during these calls, but she is the founder of SciStarter. So this is her, her program that we are running. All right, go ahead and go to the next one. Awesome. All right, just as a heads up about expectations for how to communicate with us, since this is a webinar, we have both the chat and Q&A options. So for the chat, if you have any immediate messages, if you want to share anything, if you need IT support, you can send messages through the chat to everyone, to just Roland for IT support. You can send me IT support things too, and we will get you sorted. And then for the Q&A, if you have questions about the topics and would like to know more about something or want a question addressed, we'll be checking those intermittently. We do have time at the end to talk through any leftover Q&As that don't get discussed. And since you now know what those two items are, if you are joining us in the Zoom call, go ahead and send us a message in the chat just to say hello, so we know who we're talking to. I am in California right now, but I'm usually in Phoenix, Arizona. So if you want to share where you're signing in from, that would also be great. We'd love to know where you are. I see upstate South Carolina from a library. Welcome. Welcome, Dodie. Alrighty, I can give you 15 seconds, 10 seconds, and then we'll move on to the next one. Hi, Shirley. Love it. Welcome back. Happy to have you. Awesome. From Nigeria. Interesting. I apologize in advance. Is it Kahindi? I don't know. You're welcome to correct me in the chat if you'd like. I'm sorry. Awesome. All right. Can you go ahead and swap to the next one? Next slide. Awesome. All right. So Dr. Sarah Jones, would you like to introduce yourself to everyone?
Sure. Hello, I am Sarah Jones, and I'm coming to you from the Chicago Botanic Garden, where I am the education manager for Budburst. And I've been working in both biology research and education for a while now. I also serve as the director for Project Biodiversify, which aims to enhance human diversity and inclusivity in college biology courses. And my background is a PhD in ecology, evolutionary biology, and behavior from Michigan State University.
Excellent. Thank you. And we will return to talking solely about Budburst in a moment. But before we get started with that, we do want to cover a few things about SciStarter and the higher education resources we already have available to you. But we'll start off with understanding who we are talking to. So we have a poll question, a couple of them. Have you ever participated in a citizen science project before? And I'm going to go ahead and launch those. There we go. So if you're online with us, please go ahead and answer that for us. Awesome. Thank you. Alrighty. I'm going to end it in about 7 seconds. About 71% of you have participated, and I'm ending in 3, 2, 1. Okay, so about 67% of you have participated in citizen science. I'm so glad. That means this will be a really easy thing for you to just transition to seeing how to use Budburst if you haven't already. And then for those of you who have not, welcome. I'm excited to have you be brought into the team of citizen scientists. It's going to be great. Alrighty, can we move to the next poll real quick? Now that we know if you've done citizen science, I want to know if you've actually ever been to one of our live events before. So go ahead and answer that in the chat or in the poll, if you don't mind. Awesome. Ooh, split evenly right now. Wow, it's like pretty evenly split. Awesome. Thank you. 100% of you have participated. Awesome. That was super quick. All right, so about 57% of you said yes. That's awesome. Thank you. Welcome back. We're so happy that you're back. And then for those of you who have not, I hope this is the start of something wonderful and that you join us every single week. We're here every week for on Tuesdays at this time. So happy to have you here. Awesome. All right. And then last one before we get moving, I want to know what type of viewer you are. So if you wouldn't mind sharing that information as well in this poll, and then we'll get started with the resources. Are you an aspiring scientist, a student, parent of an aspiring scientist, teacher, educator, troop leader? I myself used to be a 5th grade math and science teacher. A librarian, welcome, a researcher, a project leader, a board person on the internet, always a good one. Awesome. About 85 of you have participated. I'm going to end it in 2 seconds. Last call. 3, 2, 1, end. Alrighty. Okay, so we've got 17% of you as aspiring citizen scientists, welcome. One of you is a parent of an aspiring scientist as well. Happy to have teachers, educators, troop leaders, etc. here. 50% of you, wow. And then a librarian, awesome, or library staff in general. Welcome, awesome. All right, well, we're happy to have you here. And we'll just go ahead and get started with what we can do for you, what kind of resources we have for you. And just as a baseline for our understanding, a combined understanding of what citizen science is, citizen science is a collaboration between scientists and those of you who are curious, concerned, and motivated to make a difference. It's how people can make an impact on issues they care about and to help science. So there are many definitions and all of them are probably correct. This is the SciStarter definition and one that we connect to on a constant basis. If you could swap to the next one. There we go. All right, so to get started with citizen science, our number one step is always to join SciStarter.org because we are a database of all the projects you can get involved in. We want to make sure you have available over thousands of projects, and we have more than 1,600 projects from all over the world and made searchable in this site. So that is our number one to do. If you can move to the next one. I'll just say next. How about that? And then step 2, which relates to a part of this this specific event. Our step 2 is we have a free training for you to actually get into the know-how of citizen science. We have a free tutorial in which you can actually do a self-guided training of sorts, a module that will end in you receiving a badge for how awesome you are and for learning about the basics of citizen science. And this, again, it's free and you get a personalized badge. So you have evidence. I have it on my LinkedIn. You can link it places so you know that you have access to that. And because we have free trainings, we have also included, next slide, 3 other trainings that are available to you, all free. Once you've done the foundations training, you have access to all of them. We have a building data literacy one. We have library ones for my librarian out there. This one, if you haven't done so already, is super helpful. And then teaching in higher education with citizen science is the one that we are talking about today. So that is a super important one that was just recently released that we're trying to make sure that everyone knows about. So, and you can go to the next slide. Thank you, Roland. All right, so this is what it looks like. That one, the previous picture, if you could go back a slide real fast. Sorry. Heck. There we go. When you get onto the website, and I'll drop links in the chat once we have a moment to stop and chat for a second. But the module looks like this. You'll enter this, you'll see this picture, you'll click start and you'll be sent to a module on a different page. And the idea behind it, we have a set of objectives that we want to get through for what the teaching in higher education is with citizen science specifically. So by the end of the tutorial, you'll be able to identify benefits of including citizen science experiences in your courses. You'll identify the utility of citizen science from the perspective of multiple learning theories and effective pedagogical approaches to undergraduate learning. Select citizen science projects that align with your course. So you'll have an idea of what projects to actually include for your students, which, mind you, might now include Budburst, which is great. And then number 4, select assessment approaches and tools for teaching and research that align with your chosen citizen science projects and course learning objectives. So we'll help you beyond just giving you a project. We want you to know how to assess. And then recognize the importance of alignment between pedagogy, learning objectives, assignment activities, projects, and assessment of learning outcomes. So aligning all those things, making sure it's a cohesive learning experience for students. And then number 6, we will give you resources and strategies to prepare students in citizen science, including the foundations training. And as a whole, we have the identity of acquiring these following skills, which are part of the open skills taxonomy used by employers and schools. So if you need a way to connect it to these very specific concrete skills, we have a list of them on the site, which include these ones: formative summative assessments, constructivism, experiential learning, which is my favorite, experiential education. It's really easy, or really nice to do things hands-on, and this will give you the tools to do so. Awesome. All right, to the next slide. Okay, so in order to give you an idea of what that might look like in a very specific manner, we have Dr. Sarah Jones with us, and we'll turn it over to her to help us understand what the project is. However, I believe the next 2 slides, just before we get started with that, we do want to let you know that Budburst is a SciStarter affiliate, which essentially is just a fancy way of saying we have a special relationship with this project. We have the ability to track it more actively, and we can actually give you participation credit on your SciStarter dashboard. So if you use the same email address to create your Budburst account and your SciStarter account, it'll actually link so you can actively see how often you participate and how much time you spend on each project that's an affiliate. And that's really impactful, especially for anyone who is chiming in as an educator or student later on. If you're watching the recording, this is important because you're essentially able to say, I have proof of the service I've done for these citizen science projects. So it's a really, really useful tool. And I'll go ahead and start dropping those links in the chat. For any of you wondering how to actually get that access to affiliate or to make sure that the affiliate connects, there is a special process to go through if you follow these steps. And I'll copy and paste this in the chat. I feel like that would be useful. For any of you who registered for this event, by the way, all this will be sent via our follow-up email, excuse me. Yeah, via the follow-up email, you'll have access to all these things. If I move too fast, I love talking fast, so happens. Awesome. But the long and the short of it is going to the Budburst website, going to the SciStarter specific side of it, where you can actually request permission and authorize, which will allow you to go in through SciStarter. And the second that's happened, you just sign in regularly and you'll end up having affiliate tracking enabled, essentially. Awesome. All righty. And now I will go ahead and turn it over to Dr. Jones. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, so hello again. I am here from Budburst, which is a national citizen science program that is based at the Chicago Botanic Garden. So the overall goals of this project are to uncover the stories of plants affected by human impacts on the environment and to support related education and conservation efforts. And we do this with the help of community members, aka citizen scientists, who share observations of plants and pollinators in their local areas. And our participants collect a lot of different kinds of data and observations, but their key focus is to record the timing of seasonal changes in plants. Next, please. And another word for this, oh, could you go back one? Thank you. Another word for this is phonology, and phonology is the study of the timing of seasonal life stages, also called phenophases, in plants or animals. And at Budburst, we, of course, are focused on our plants here. And for example, what we care about is when during the year, plants like the apple tree you see here grow new leaves and flowers, produce fruit, and lose their leaves or go through fall leaf color change. And a lot of these seasonal life stages or phenophases are affected by temperature. And with climate change, many plants are flowering and growing new leaves earlier in the year due to shorter, warmer winters. So these early warm springs we're having might cue that apple tree to produce flowers earlier than it used to, for example. We also have plants going through their fall changes, like fall leaf color change, later in the year. And these changes can impact us all in various ways, including by disrupting food webs. So for example, if a plant flowers too early in the spring, the pollinators that rely on it may not yet be active and miss out on an important food resource. And then that plant also misses out on being pollinated, which is not good. And secondly, for example, if plants change the timing of fruit production, this can have important repercussions. For example, it might affect when farmers are able to harvest their crops. And recording changes in plants can therefore help us predict and understand the effects of climate change on larger ecosystems. And that is really what we're trying to get at here at Budburst. Next slide, please. So who are the researchers that are involved in this work? Budburst is led by Dr. Emma Oshrin, who is a researcher here at the Chicago Botanic Garden, and she is joined in this endeavor by many others at the garden, including other conservation scientists, postdocs, and graduate students. However, it does not stop there at the garden because, as I said, Budburst is a national program, and our data are freely available to both researchers and members of the public online through our online database. Therefore, people nationwide use our database to support their own research endeavors. So, for example, Budburst data have been used by university researchers to help understand when invasive plants should be targeted for removal and to also help predict the timing of blossoms on cherry trees in DC. Students also use the data to help answer their own research questions, like how temperature affects the timing of leaf growth in campus trees is one example. Next, please. So those are the researchers. The citizen scientists are a very broad span of people. Anyone can participate in Budburst. We have projects that work for all age groups, and we have members contributing data nationwide and even internationally, as you can see by those green dots on the map in the lower right-hand corner. Every dot represents an observation there. And we prioritize accessibility with our project. No special equipment is required to participate. And we also accept observations on any outdoor plant at any location. So you can observe what works for you in whatever context works for you. And people participate in this program for all different kinds of reasons. People have said it helps them connect with nature, especially if they're perhaps living in a city. It helps them understand that plants are everywhere and going through important and interesting processes all year long, wherever you happen to be. People have also done this to contribute in a tangible way to conservation efforts. So researchers use the data collected to really help inform us about what plants are going to need extra help, and again, how climate change is going to have effects on larger ecosystems, and help us understand that. Finally, a big reason people contribute is for educational purposes. For example, you can see this paper, a recent paper by Dr. Lichty came out that discussed student participation in Budburst that occurred in an introductory college biology course during remote learning. And they really used it to help enhance data literacy and scientific writing skills with their students. They had the students collect and use Budburst data and write about it. Next, please. And so for Budburst, you can participate throughout most of the year from early spring to late fall. And the timing of participation might depend on the particular research project you're interested in contributing to. We have a lot of different research projects. I've listed some of the main ones here, and you can also learn more about each project on our website, budburst.org. And today I'm really focusing on this phonology and climate project, but some others include pollinators and climate. And for that, you can track the number of pollinators that visit a flowering plant in your yard during a 10-minute observation period, for example. For milkweed and monarchs, you can monitor a patch of milkweed for monarch eggs and caterpillars throughout the season where they're in your area. And for nativars, you could plant your own research garden and help us understand which plants in that garden pollinators are preferring to visit throughout the year. Next, please. And so, as I said, I'll be focusing on our phonology and climate project today and really digging into how to participate in this project. So it involves a couple different steps. Step one is to simply choose a plant you're going to observe. Next. Thank you. And again, just as a reminder, this can be any plant, any outdoor plant at any location throughout the States and even abroad if you would like. And the first thing you're going to do is provide us with some information about the plant. So you'll let us know what species you're looking at, the location, which can simply be an address, the date of your observation, and we encourage you to submit photographs of the plant you're looking at because this helps us with data quality checking, and it's also just nice to see pictures of the plants. And for species, when you're identifying species, we also encourage you to either look at a plant you're pretty sure about what species it is, or you can also use our website and our apps, which I'll tell you about later, to help you identify what plant it is. Okay, so step two is identifying the phenophase of one or more plant parts. And again, the phenophase is simply a seasonal life stage. So if you're if you've decided to observe this common milkweed that I've depicted here, you could tell us what its flowers are doing when you observe it, what its leaves are doing, and what its fruit is doing. And the parts you observe and the parts you give us information on are going to depend on what kind of plant you observe. So for example, if you're observing a pine tree, our data submission forms will ask you what the cones are doing instead of the flowers and the fruit. And that's just something to keep in mind. But for this example, we're going to be focusing on what our milkweed is doing. Next. So we're going to do some practice here with this poll. So pretend you're outside looking at this beautiful milkweed plant, and you want to tell Budburst what the flowers on your milkweed plant are doing today. So you'll pick the phenophase that best matches the picture here. Would you say that they don't have any flowers, and so no flowers are visible? First bud, which is just you first see some flower buds on the plant. Bud burst is when those buds just burst open and a little peak of a petal shows through. First flower is just one flower has just opened, all the way to just a few flowers, half or more of the flowers, or have the flowers wilted and fallen. So I'll give you some time to answer that.
And Sarah, this is for the picture that you have on the screen, right? We're pretending we're
Yes.
looking at this one. Okay, cool.
Yes, thank you for clarifying. Yep. So just look at that picture and decide what flower phenophase you think best matches that picture.
Interesting. There's a little split opinions on this one. That's fascinating. About 75% of us have participated. I'm going to give you another moment before I close it. All right, last chance. It's going away. Okay, it's gone. All right, here are your results.
Okay, all right. Well, good thing we can talk about it. So most of you said middle, which is what I would say, which is half or more of the flowers are fully open. And I do think everything's easier when you're in person too. So I do think part of this is a picture. But if you look at this plant carefully, you can see that all the flowers on the clump that are in the clump on the left hand of your screen, those flowers are open flowers. You can kind of see those petals, and then you do see some just on the clump on the right, there are just some buds. So I would say about half of the flowers on this plant that I can see are open. So I would have chosen middle. However, again, you might be, when you're in person, you would want to look carefully at the whole plant, at all of the plants at all of the flowers on the plant, and come to a conclusion that way. So this is good to know. I'm starting you off with a hard example, and I apologize for that, but middle is what I would put for this particular picture. And I'm happy to answer questions about that as well. Okay, so next slide. Thank you. So once you decide what your plant is doing, you can submit that observation to us. And I also want to state that there is a section on any submission form where you can write notes about your observation. So if you're just getting started and you're a little unsure about which phenophase you would pick, you are more than welcome to write in some notes and be like, I wasn't sure, I couldn't choose between early and middle, for example, for this reason. And those notes, along with any pictures you submit, are going to help us figure out what's going on and help us kind of determine what that data should look like. And so again, don't be afraid to contribute, even if you have some questions. That is perfectly wonderful. And once you decide to report and submit your data, you can do this in two ways. You can fill out a printable observation sheet that you can download online at our website, and I'll put the links in the chat. And those observation sheets will have phenophases to choose from, and they'll ask about the plant species and all that. You can also download the Budburst mobile app for free. And all of this is free, of course, but you can get that on Android or Apple just by searching Budburst in your app store and download that app, and that will enable you to collect and submit data while you're outside looking at your plants. Also, the app has plant identification suggestions from iNaturalist. So if you take a picture, we'll help you figure out what species you're looking at. And all of these are available in both Spanish and English, the website and the mobile app. Next, please. Okay. And then finally, we also suggest that you keep observing the same plant over time. This will both help you identify the phenophases it's in, because you will be more familiar with that plant, and you'll be able, for example, this milkweed, you can tell us not only about what its flowers are doing, but you can also tell us when it first gets its ripe fruit or when its leaves are starting to wilt for winter. And that is all really important data that you can contribute. Next, please. Okay, so I think that about wraps it up, but I am available for questions, and I will put some links in the chat as well. You can, there's Budburst, a lot of how-to guides, more practice on the website, those downloadable print sheets, observation sheets and forms, and and some activities for educators and families as well. So I will drop some of those links in the chat.
Thank you. That's awesome. Just for reference, actually, Roland, would you mind ending your screen share? I'm going to go ahead and share my screen real fast to show you what the Budburst website looks like. That's not right. There it is. Are we seeing the right thing?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So I went on here the other day to see what the resources for educators was on here, and attempted to do a contribution. And so I have a contribution on my phone from the app, and it was really easy to use, which was nice. Although I will say, for like background knowledge of knowing how to identify different things, it was really, really useful to know where things were on the website. So I would highly recommend looking through the website before assigning this as anything for a class if you're an educator, or if you're looking through for yourself. I would look through the process and then go see the resources to just double check that you know where to find help, because there are a ton of opportunities on the app for them to send you to the website to use that resource, which was super, or to get a better understanding or a guide for these things. So for any of you who are in education, this is a really, really easy page to get to under activities for educators. It's right there. And it's all the way from pre-K, grade 12 to all the way to higher education, which is excellent. And if you were unsure of that, you can get to this through SciStarter as well in the link that I dropped in the chat, and that should be super helpful. Alrighty, so I have a few questions, but I just want to let everyone know it is this is the time. If you do have any questions, if you'd like to put them in the Q&A, that would be excellent. I think that is super important to hear what we're unsure about at this time, or what items or what parts we want more information on. From my personal experience, I just does the plant you observe need to be a native plant, or can it be cultivated?
It can be cultivated. One thing we do suggest is if you know it's a specific cultivated variety of plant, please let us know when you're observing it. But most of the time, for us living in the city, we are looking at a cultivated plant and we do not know which exact variety it is, and that is totally fine. We take that into account when we're doing data analysis. So yes, any cultivated plant is fine. The main limitation is that it needs to be outdoors, because we're interested in how the weather is affecting those plants. So I observe a street tree routinely for my observations.
Street tree. Love it.
I can't say that.
All right. There we go. What are some of the most surprising findings from the data so far? Are data used to inform policy? It's a great question. Thanks, Darlene.
Yeah, so there are a couple of different findings. So for a project that's more specific on pollinators, we're actually looking at very specific plants that are sold throughout the country, different varieties of different plants that are known to attract pollinators, but we're actually kind of comparing them so that home gardeners who are interested in providing support to pollinators know which plants to buy at the nurseries, because there's actually a lot of overwhelming choice there and you don't necessarily get a lot of information from the nurseries. So that's super applicable to specific people making informed decisions. More broader, like a broader policy wise, we've had research that's really kind of comparing how invasive plants or kind of problematic plants that are taking over, out competing a lot of our native plants, for instance, how climate change is affecting them differently than the plants that are being out competed. And that's helping us understand how to manage those plants and how to better kind of plan for the future, how to conserve the plants that are having problems and manage the plants that might be kind of taking control because they're responding to climate change by growing a lot. Yep. So those are some examples.
That's great. On the same topic, actually, if this project was doing every single thing that it was envisioned to do, if it was a perfect world and every data set did the optimal amount of work, how do you envision this affecting the future?
Oh, that's a good question. So, some nice positive thinking that I don't always do. So I have to think about it for a minute. But really, it would help us make a lot of good decisions around how to protect our plants and larger ecosystems in the face of our changing climate, because we all are. It's one thing to want to protect the environment and to try to do our best with the knowledge we have, but I think there is a quote from somewhere that I'm stealing, that better knowledge equals better caretaking. I'm not sure who said that. It was not me, but when it comes down to it, there's a kind of a lack of science around plants in a lot of ways. They're not as charismatic as some of these endangered animals, but they're extremely important for all of us. If you had to only protect one thing for us all to survive, it would be plants. So really just getting more of a handle on how our plants are doing and which ones need more help and how we can best help is going to make a very big contribution to conservation and fill in a big hole that we have in our knowledge around how our ecosystems are going to respond to climate.
I never thought about the idea of there being a hole. I never expected there to be an issue of, I guess charisma is kind of I never thought about that. That's really fascinating. Wow. Not everyone's a plant lover. How?
I think plants are charismatic, but I've been told I'm a bit strange. So
Well, a lot of people are getting their house plants and being really, really into I don't know, propagation nowadays. So maybe it's the turn of the
yes, it's the time of plants.
They're entering a renaissance. Okay, I have another question from Darlene. What is the most common / popular plant species people share and identify?
That's a good question. It sort of depends on where you are in the country. I'm kind of collecting links while we talk. So I'm going to drop a link in the chat, but you can go to our website to look up Budburst plants, which are Budburst species, which are basically species we suggest focusing data collection efforts on. Not that we don't like data from other species, these are just some species that are of particular interest and have also been a target of data collection with Budburst in the past. So you can actually go to our website and look up our recommended species in your state, and that's a good way to tell what species have been focused on. Otherwise, we have a lot of, just in general, we have a ton of red maple observations, oak, a lot of different oak species, milkweed's a big one. But yeah, it depends a lot on where you are.
That is super helpful. I didn't know that was a resource, and now I found it. I'm able to to pick a region of Arizona and then see and apply, and it will tell me, oh my gosh, this is awesome.
Okay, good. Well, I'm glad you got that up on because I've got to.
I don't know the links off the top.
Perfect.
There it is, right there. But you can just add in your, it also tells you how many species have been identified. 441 species, 97,600 observations, almost 25,000 participants. That's incredible. That's awesome. Yeah. Okay. That's great. Oh man, this has great implications for anyone who wants to make a pollinator garden. I know we will eventually have a conversation with that on this in this webinar series, I believe, about planting and such. So that's a good one to know about for preparation for that one. Awesome. All right, switching a little bit of the type of question. If there are questions about the specific project, anyone who's with us here, go ahead and put them in the Q&A. We'll be ready to answer them.
Oh,
were there?
I just sent you a bunch of links, not to everyone. I'm going to do that.
Okay, gotcha. Darlene does have another question before we move on. Are there any points faculty in higher education should know about Budburst, like specific to higher ed?
Yeah, so we have a good place on our website is the educators activities for educators, and we have a lot of higher ed specific activities there that I'm linking in the chat now. I'm also a great resource for you. I like to think, at least, but literally my job is to help educators at different levels, and most of my experience is in higher ed. So I can help out with some tips and tricks. But let's see, the one thing that I didn't have time to go over today that's really helpful to know is we have a function called Budburst Groups, where you can aggregate and track class data. And that is extremely useful for and I know SciStarter has that as well, but that it allows students to actually aggregate their own data that they can collect. Say if they have a specific research question that they're looking into, maybe they want to compare two specific plants on campus and see who gets more pollinators, for example. They could actually aggregate their data together and download and analyze that as a student project. So I encourage you to check out that kind of functionality, because I find that especially higher ed educators really appreciate that, because it allows students to manage their own data and sort of help scaffold them in terms of launching independent projects, where they can ask and answer their own questions within an already structured citizen science project, which I think has been very helpful for people.
That's excellent. That is a great resource. Darlene, thank you for that description here. So SciStarter only tracks evidence of participation, so like frequency, and so not the actual data observations. So what you're describing sounds super, super useful for educators. Yeah, Darlene, I second that entirely. That's awesome. Yeah. That's great. Okay, if there aren't any specific questions to the project yet, okay, if anything does come up, go ahead and let us know. We have some time left. I'm just curious, could you give us some description as to how you came to be in this role? I'm curious what your background is and how you decided that this was the time and the moment for you to be in Budburst.
Yes, well, my background is especially twisting, which is fun. So I was in biology research, but was very keenly focused on education, and ended up deciding that was what I wanted to spend my time doing. But in my graduate career, I actually was studying a lot of animal behavior, and specifically I was studying aggression in spotted hyenas. So I know about charismatic megafauna compared to plants. And so I knew I wanted to go into education, and during my PhD, I was teaching a lot, and I was managing a lot of student independent projects, actually. And I found it was extremely difficult to scaffold them and to make students feel like there was a reason they were doing it. We had a short period of time. Students had to come up with everything themselves, like protocols, questions, all that, which is great. But I found that they needed something a bit more than that. So I've actually been drawn to citizen science as a great way to give them a broader picture of why they might be engaging in science, and also helping them putting them within the confines of a specific project that also has some flexibility to allow them to branch out and maybe inspire them to ask and answer their own questions. So it was really, when I came across the job listing for Budburst, I actually read it and was like, that was what I wish I had when I was teaching. And so that's kind of how I was drawn to this. And then since I've accidentally fallen in love with plants because they've been in my life now, and now I'm a plant lover.
That's awesome. That's incredible. So hyenas are just no longer ever a focus, or are you still open to that?
I love my hyenas. So always happy to answer questions people might have about spotted hyenas, but they are not my current focus. But I do get some fun animal behavior stuff with the pollinator observations. So that's a good aspect of my job.
That's excellent. Okay, I think that might be. Well, I would like to know personally what your favorite part of this project is, or what is the number one reason that this stands out. But you might have, unless it's overlapping on what you've already said, but.
Well, I think professionally, I was attracted to it for one reason, but personally, I actually am attracted to it for a different reason, if that makes sense, because I came in as someone who was not, who knew the biology of ecosystems and plants, but plants had never been my focus. I was definitely a member of the population that doesn't really notice or appreciate the plants that are around them. And so the best thing about Budburst, and I think other similar citizen science programs that ask you to observe nature in your surroundings, has been like, I'm now excited to go on walks with my dogs because I could see something really cool I've not seen before. And this is coming from someone who did field research in Kenya, watching spotted hyenas fight each other. Like, that sounds super exciting, right? But I'm like, the best part of it is made me realize like there's a ton of really exciting things that are outside my door that I can really be annoying about and make my dog stand in one place for 10 minutes while I watch a bee, for example. And it's just brought a lot of richness, I think, to my everyday life that wasn't there before. So that's what I appreciate about it.
That's great. That's beautiful. That's like when I was teaching 5th grade, it was always a battle of like, okay, there are some really cool plants out there we loved like a YouTube video on the superpowers of plants, but then being able to bring them to the realization of, oh, well, if you walk outside, look at that crazy plant in Arizona that we only have here because it doesn't survive anywhere else and it's really wild. Like, why not take a moment to really appreciate that? So that's beautiful. Awesome. Well, I don't have any more questions. If there is anything that comes up, anyone in the chat, you're welcome to add something in. Matt, Roland, if you wouldn't mind moving to the next. Yeah, okay. So thank you so much, Dr. Jones, for joining us. We are going to close out. So our upcoming events for SciStarter Live, we're here every single week at 2 p.m. Eastern time. And we have quite a few items coming up. I do want to warn you, as of probably an hour ago, there might be a change made to the schedule, but the upcoming events are including definitely September 27th being Learn to Observe the Moon with NASA, and that will be, and then the October 4th and October 11th, those are different dates, but they will be happening, as well as an event for mental health awareness. So Mental Health Day is on October 10th, and so we have an event, I believe, on the 11th, which will replace, or we'll be moving things around. Point is take a look at our blog so you can stay up to date on what changes, and that'll be super helpful for you, but you can always chime in every week. I'm looking, thank you, Dr. Jones. And then if you wouldn't mind turning the slide one more time, Roland, I believe it's one more. Yeah, okay, great. As a part of this, since this is a new resource that we're using, we want to know how we're doing and how we can improve. So we do have a survey that will be sent out to you, or it will appear when we end the call. It doesn't take very long, it takes like 2 minutes to fill out. That's just what do you like, what do you not like, how are we doing, did you learn anything, yada, yada. So if you wouldn't mind filling that out, that helps us a ton, and we can aim these to be focused on things that you want to learn about. So if you have any suggestions, we're happy to hear them. You can always contact us at info@scistarter.org. I've already heard from some viewers from SciStarter Live this series, so I'm happy to hear more. Send anything you'd like. I do have one more nod to our training. So we do have that higher education training that is newer. If there are any questions about that, we are happy to answer them here. Or if you would like to send us a message later, you are more than welcome to, or if you need advice on how to use it, that would be great. The URL for that one I put earlier in the chat, but I'm going to go ahead and drop that in again before you all leave. But this is our final call. If there is anything else that that is to be discussed, and Dr. Jones just added in. We have a webinar specifically for educators coming up through Budburst, September 27th, 4 p.m. Central. You can sign up here. That's awesome. Okay, that's great. I'll add that to our follow-up email as well. Hi there, Michael. I am Assistant Regional Division Chief of Region 1 Sciences, Starfleet. Thanks for the link. And a substitute teacher in public high school. I enjoyed this. Oh, I'm so glad. Welcome. Substitute teacher in public high school. I'm curious what subjects. Is it sciences, I'm assuming? Sciences. Okay. Just general sciences. Okay. Awesome. Thank you for sharing. I'm glad you're here. Yeah, hopefully if any of your teacher friends want to view an option of using Budburst in high school, I'm sure they can adapt this webinar recording to what they would like to learn about. And there are a million resources on Budburst's website as well as SciStarter. Excellent. Okay. Well, I share with them. Awesome. Thank you, Michael. Appreciate that. Awesome. If there aren't any other questions, then we'll go ahead and close out. I think we should be good. I didn't check Facebook though. Oops. Let me do that real fast just in case. Nope, looks like we're good. Awesome. Thank you all for joining us. I appreciate everything. Thank you, Sarah, so much for all that information. That was incredibly beneficial. Even for my minor research before this, I'm like, wow, I didn't even know about these other resources. So thank you so much. Awesome. All right, I'm going to go ahead and end the recording. Thank you all for joining us.